Why was she standing there, alone, 10 feet away from men who wouldn't even look at her? The heat at forward operating base anvil didn't just press down, it suffocated. It tasted of kerosene and dust that had seen too many wars. Layla Alaman adjusted the strap cutting into her collarbone and watched the men she'd been assigned to assist. SEAL Team 4. Giants moving like water through fire, their heavy gear looking weightless. They spoke in a language she wasn't invited to learn. Grunts. Acronyms. Hand signals that meant life or death to them and nothing to her. "Check the comms block," one said, Chief Miller. Beard like rusted wire, voice like gravel. Getting static on the secondary. "Solar flare," another replied, not bothering to look up. Then he jerked his chin toward her. "Or maybe it's the bad juju standing over there." He didn't lower his voice. Didn't need to. She was an asset. That's what they called her. A polite word for a tool you pick up when needed and forget when you don't. A translator with a security clearance printed on paper thin enough to see through. Layla didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on the case at her feet, long, heavy, scarred. Inside was a Che-Tak M200 intervention, a rifle that cost more than her entire village had earned in a decade. Maybe two. "Hey, sweetheart." That voice cut through the engine noise. Lieutenant Commander Vance. Call sign, Grave. His shadow fell across her like a prophecy. "We packed light, speed is security, you're hauling a coffin." She looked up, no rank on her chest, just contractor fatigues and a shemagh around her neck. "It's necessary equipment, Commander." His laugh was dry, cruel, it made the others look. "Necessary?" He leaned in, scanning her like a broken weapon. "We're hitting a compound, room clearing, that thing's a boat anchor. You planning to club them to death with it?" "If the situation dictates," she said, her voice flat, empty of the deference they wanted. Miller laughed, slapping a magazine home. "Let her bring it, boss. Maybe she thinks she's gonna snipe a goat from the LZ." Vance stepped closer, chewing tobacco, gun oil, the smell of men who lived in the violence they carried. "I read your file, Alaman, translator, cultural analyst, not shooter." He paused, eyes on that massive case. "You stay in the back, you speak when I tell you, you shoot." Another pause, longer this time. "You don't shoot. Carry that damn thing if you want, but if you lag behind, we leave you, clear." "Crystal, Commander." He stared at her, looking for a crack, finding nothing. He turned away. "Wheels up in 10. Miller, get the asset a smaller rucksack. She wants to play Sherpa." The men dispersed toward the waiting Osprey, a metal beast that would swallow them into the dark. Layla knelt beside her case, popped the latches. Inside, cradled in foam like a religious relic, lay the disassembled rifle. Cold, massive, beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. She checked the scope rings, tight. She checked the bolt face, clean. She checked the dope card taped to the stock, her handwriting tiny and precise. Numbers that meant life, numbers that meant death. Wind is a fluid, her father had taught her, years before the bombs turned him into memory. The bullet is a boat. You do not fight the current, you sail it. "Don't slow us down, Princess," someone muttered, kicking gravel onto her boots. She snapped the case shut, hoisted 50 pounds onto her shoulder with a grunt she swallowed before it could escape. They laughed at the size of the gun because they thought war was about kicking down doors. They didn't understand the silence of distance. They didn't know she wasn't bringing it to protect herself. She was bringing it because she knew exactly what was waiting out there in the open desert, and an MP7 wouldn't scratch it. She walked toward the Osprey, the laughter of the seals drowned out by engines starting to scream. But there was something they didn't know yet, something she hadn't told them, not yet. The insertion wasn't graceful. It was a controlled crash into darkness. The Osprey didn't touch down. It hovered 10 feet above hard-packed earth, ramp dropping just long enough for boots to slam dirt before surging back into the night. Layla hit the ground hard. The weight of the rifle strapped to the pack Miller had grudgingly provided drove her knees into gravel. For 1 second the world was rotor wash and stinging dust. Then the bird was gone. Silence rushed back in like floodwater. Heavy. Suffocating. Move, Vance's voice hissed in her ear. The seals were already 50 meters out, moving as one organism through the dark. Through her single-tube PVS-14 night vision, the world became a grainy green tunnel. It distorted depth, made the rubble-strewn path treacherous. Ahead, the operators wore quad-tube panoramic goggles, four-eyed insects gliding over obstacles she had to scramble across. She gritted her teeth, forced her legs to pump. The rifle alone weighed 30 pounds. With ammo, water, plates, she was hauling half her body weight. The heat of day was bleeding from the stones, but the air was still thick. It smelled of sagebrush and the copper tang of ancient conflict. Asset is lagging, Miller's voice, casual, cruel. Gap is opening 20 meters. Close it, Alaman, Vance's order. We aren't waiting for you to catch your breath. She didn't waste oxygen on a reply, just adjusted her stride, ignored the burn screaming through her legs. They were testing her, a hazing ritual old as warfare itself. If she couldn't keep pace, she didn't deserve to be there. They wanted her to fail, to drop out, so they could justify their disdain. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't see in their thermal scopes and infrared lasers, was that she'd already passed tests they couldn't imagine. They moved into ruins, a village destroyed not by this war but maybe the one before, or the one before that. Skeletonized walls rose against the stars like jagged teeth. The ground here was treacherous, rebar, shattered masonry, the ghosts of domestic life. The SEALs relied on technology. Their lasers swept corners. Their thermal imagers hunted for heat signatures, bodies, threats that registered on sensors, but Layla wasn't looking for heat. She was looking for absence. She'd grown up in places like this. She knew how rubble fell naturally, how gravity settled stones over years. She knew that when debris looked too structured, too deliberate, it wasn't gravity, it was man. The team funneled into a narrow alley, a choke point between collapsed apartment blocks. Miller took point, his weapon up, scanning. The others stacked behind him. Layla brought up the rear, her single eye struggling with depth perception. That's when she saw it. A pile of concrete blocks on the left side, too neat, too symmetrical. And this was what made her breath catch, a thin wire running from the base, disappearing into shadow. Her heart hammered. She opened her mouth to speak, to warn them. But would they listen? Would they stop their forward momentum because the asset, the refugee girl dragging a useless rifle, had a bad feeling? She knew the answer. She'd known it since the tarmac, when they'd laughed at her equipment, when they'd called her princess, when they'd made it clear she was cargo, not crew. So she made a choice, the kind of choice that changes everything. Contact left, she whispered into her mic. Firm, clear, not a suggestion, a fact. IED, wire, 3 o'clock from Miller's position. Miller froze, the entire stack froze. Vance's voice came through. Asset, you certain? Confirmed. She kept her voice steady. Pressure plate, artisan manufacture, command wire running northeast. There was a pause, a calculation happening in real time. Believe the contractor, or trust their technology that had seen nothing. Hassan, Vance ordered, check it. Hassan, the team's explosive ordnance specialist, moved forward like a surgeon approaching an open body. He knelt, pulled out a small probe. Within seconds, his voice came through. Holy, she's right. It's a daisy chain. 3 devices would have taken out half the stack. Silence on the comms, the kind of silence that's louder than gunfire. How did you? Miller started. But Layla didn't answer, because ahead in the ruins beyond the IED she'd seen something else. A thermal signature, small, quick, moving away from their position. Someone had been watching, waiting for them to walk into the trap, and now that someone knew they'd been made. We're compromised, she said. Spotter moving east, we need to. The night exploded into violence. Muzzle flashes erupted from 3 positions, concrete pulverized, rounds cracked past her head. The SEALs dropped into cover, returning fire, but the ambush had been perfectly planned. They were in a kill box, triangulated, trapped. And somewhere in the chaos, as she pressed herself against cold stone with her heart trying to escape her ribs, Layla thought, "This is it. This is what I knew was coming. This is why I brought the rifle." What happens when everything you prepared for becomes the only thing standing between life and death? "RPG!" someone screamed. The rocket-propelled grenade screamed overhead, slamming into the wall behind them. The explosion punched the air from Layla's lungs. Dust and fragments rained down. In her earpiece, voices overlapped, calling positions, casualties, ammo counts. "Davis is hit," Miller's voice. "Leg wound, arterial." "Hassan, smoke," Vance ordered. "We need concealment now." Smoke grenades popped. Purple smoke, R blocking, thermal defeating, billowed into the kill zone. It bought them seconds, maybe minutes if they were lucky, but luck had stopped visiting this place years ago. "We're pinned down," Vance said, his voice showing cracks for the first time. "Air support is 20 minutes out. We won't last 20 minutes. Layla pressed against the wall, her rifle case still strapped to her back. Useless. A boat anchor, just like Vance had said. Around her, the SEALs were doing what they did best, fighting. But they were outgunned, outpositioned. The ambush had been too perfect. "We need to move to the compound," Miller said. "Use it as a strongpoint." "Negative," Hassan countered. "That's where they want us. We push there, we're walking into worse." Davis groaned. The tourniquet on his leg was holding, but barely. Every second they stayed here was a second closer to him bleeding out. Layla's mind raced. She'd studied the brief. The compound they were supposed to hit was 800 meters northeast, 800 meters of open ground. They'd never make it, not carrying Davis, not with that many guns on them, unless... She looked up. Above the kill zone, maybe 60 meters away, was the skeleton of what had been a minaret, 4 stories tall, partially collapsed but structurally sound enough. A perch. "Commander," she said into her mic. "Not now, Elamin. I need 2 minutes." "For what?" Vance's voice was sharp. "To change the math." She didn't wait for permission. She shrugged the rifle case off her back, popped the latches, and started assembling. Her hands moved on autopilot, barrel to receiver, bolt carrier, scope mount. Each piece clicked into place with mechanical certainty. Miller crawled over, his face covered in dust and blood that wasn't his. "What are you doing?" "Getting us out," she said. With that, he looked at the massive rifle taking shape in her hands. You can't." But she could. And somewhere deep down, beneath the skepticism and the dismissal, he was starting to realize it. "Cover me to the minaret," she said to Vance. 60 seconds. Then you move Davis toward the exfil point. I'll suppress their positions." "Suppress?" Vance sounded incredulous. "You're one person with one rifle." "Commander," she locked the bolt carrier, chambered around. The sound was definitive, final. "I'm not going to suppress them." She looked at him through the haze and smoke. "I'm going to erase them." Something in her eyes made Vance stop arguing. Maybe it was the certainty, or maybe it was the realization that they had no other plays left. "Hassan's sledge," Vance barked. "Get her to that minaret, 30 seconds, go." They moved through hell, smoke concealing them, bullets fragmenting stone around them. Layla ran with the rifle across her back, 28 pounds of precision steel, following Hassan's broad back as he navigated the rubble. Behind her, Sledge covered their movement with controlled bursts from his rifle. They reached the base of the minaret. The entrance was a gaping wound in the structure. Inside, a spiral staircase climbed into darkness. "You sure about this?" Hassan asked. She didn't answer, just started climbing. The stairs were crumbling. Each step was a gamble with physics. The rifle case banged against walls. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Below, the firefight continued. Above, the stars waited. She emerged onto what remained of the minaret's observation platform. 3 walls standing. 1 wall gone, open to the desert night. It gave her a commanding view of the kill zone below and beyond, the open ground leading to the compound. She set up quickly, bipod deployed, rifle positioned, eye to scope. The world condensed into that circle of enhanced vision. Through the thermal scope, the battlefield became clear. 5 enemy positions. Maybe 12 fighters total, coordinated, professional. They'd planned this ambush well. She found the wind, felt it on her face. 14 miles per hour, full value from the west. She made adjustments, elevation, windage. The math happening in her head, equations written in muscle memory and survival. First target, a heavy machine gun position on a rooftop, 840 meters. The gunner was laying down suppressive fire, keeping the SEALs pinned. She breathed. In, out, between heartbeats there's a moment, a stillness. She squeezed. The rifle bucked. The suppressor kept the sound manageable but couldn't hide the violence of the round leaving the barrel. Through the scope she watched. Time stretched. The bullet covered the distance in seconds that felt like hours. Then impact. The gunner dropped. The machine gun went silent. What the Miller's voice in her ear? Did someone just... Keep moving, she said, her voice calm, clinical. I've got you covered. Second target, RPG team repositioning. 900 meters, elevated position behind rubble. Wind had shifted slightly. She adjusted, squeezed. The loader went down. The shooter turned, confused, looking for the threat. He never found it. She sent another round. He folded. Jesus Christ, Sledge whispered. She's actually doing it. Third target, command element. They'd been directing the ambush from a partially collapsed building. Through her thermal scope she could see them gesturing, pointing, trying to coordinate, trying to understand why their perfectly planned attack was falling apart. She didn't give them time to figure it out. One shot, then another. The command element ceased to exist. The remaining fighters were breaking, confused, scared. Their ambush had become their execution. They'd planned to kill Americans tonight. Instead, they were being hunted by something they couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't understand. Exfil point is clear, Vance reported. His voice had changed. The doubt was gone. Asset Layla status. Covering your movement, she said. Go. She watched through her scope as the SEALs moved. Hassan and Sledge carrying Davis between them. Miller on point, Vance bringing up the rear. They moved fast now, the weight of survival pushing them forward. She scanned for threats. Found 2 more fighters trying to flank the SEALs' route. Distance 1,000 meters, wind picking up. 16 miles per hour now. She made her corrections, sent her rounds. The flankers stopped flanking. Asset, we're at the rally point, Vance said. Exfil inbound, 2 minutes. Copy, she said. I'm moving to you. She broke down the rifle, not completely, no time, but enough to move with it. She descended the minaret faster than she'd climbed it, taking stairs 2 at a time, her legs burning, her lungs screaming. Behind her, the kill zone was silent now. The ambush that was supposed to destroy the SEALs had instead become a graveyard for those who'd planned it. She emerged from the minaret and ran. The rally point was 400 meters across open ground. Every step felt exposed, vulnerable, but the SEALs were there. She could see their IR strobes marking the LZ. She pushed harder, her vision narrowed. Her world became the ground in front of her and the strobes ahead. She was almost there, almost safe. Then she heard it, the distinctive crack of incoming fire. Rounds kicked up dirt to her left. To her right, someone had survived. Someone had a bead on her. But before she could react, return fire erupted from the rally point. The SEALs, the men who'd laughed at her on the tarmac, were covering her, laying down suppressive fire to bring her home. She sprinted the last 100 meters and dove into the perimeter. Sledge caught her. Welcome back, he said. The helicopter was coming. She could hear it now. The distinctive thump of rotor blades beating the air. A Chinook, big, ugly, beautiful. It came in fast and low, not even touching down. The ramp dropped. The SEALs moved as one, carrying Davis up first, then Hassan, then Miller. Vance grabbed her arm. Go. She ran up the ramp, the rifle case across her back. Inside the Chinook, the crew chief was already securing Davis to a litter. The aircraft was lifting even before she'd found a seat, but they weren't clear yet. Through the open ramp she could see the LZ receding. And then movement, a figure emerging from cover, lifting something. RPG. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. She moved to the ramp, dropped to one knee, brought the rifle up. No bipod, no time, just her, the rifle, and the target. The helicopter was moving, banking. The shot was impossible. Every instructor she'd ever had would say so. Moving platform, moving target. 1,100 meters and growing, wind unknown. Elevation changing by the second. Check your scope, sweetheart, Miller's voice in her memory. You're looking at a ghost. She found the wind, felt it through the open ramp. Full value, 9 o'clock, 14 miles per hour. The heat shimmer distorting the target. The Chinook's movement adding chaos to every calculation. She made her adjustments, not with mathematics, not with dope cards, with instinct, with something deeper than training. She breathed out, found that space between heartbeats, and squeezed. The rifle roared. The Chinook's turbulence fought her, but she held steady. Through the scope, she watched the round cover the distance, watched it fall toward the target like a meteor seeking Earth. Then impact. The fighter with the RPG went down. The weapon dropped, unfired. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Miller's voice, quiet with something that might have been awe. Did she just? Ramp up, the crew chief yelled. The hydraulics whined, the ramp sealed. They were airborne, safe, the war receding beneath them. Layla collapsed onto the nylon bench, her chest heaving, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fatting. Around her, the SEALs were silent, looking at her with eyes that saw something different than they'd seen on the tarmac. Vance moved through the cabin, checked on Davis, then came to her. He knelt down so they were eye level. That last shot, he said, from a moving bird, 1,100 meters. She didn't respond, didn't need to. I've been doing this 20 years, Vance continued. Never seen anything like that, not from anyone, not from our best snipers, not from anyone. He paused. Who are you really? She met his eyes, saw the question there, the confusion, the respect. Just a refugee, Commander, she said. Just a girl who learned to shoot. He stared at her a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Yeah, he said, just a girl. But they both knew that was a lie, the kind of lie that protects something precious. Could the same shot that saved them also destroy her? The flight back to Fob Anvil was quieter than the flight out. Davis was stable, hooked to monitors that beeped reassurance into the metal hull. Miller sat with his head in his hands, processing what he'd witnessed. Hassan was openly weeping, kissing the floor of the aircraft, the relief of survival pouring out of him. But Layla felt something else, a coldness settling into her bones. She'd done the impossible, made shots that would be talked about, studied, analyzed, and that terrified her more than the firefight had. They landed as dawn was breaking. The base was already buzzing. Word had spread. A team that should have been wiped out had survived. More than survived, they'd turned an ambush into a massacre. Questions were being asked. How, who, what? In the windowless debriefing room, stripped of her gear, wearing ill-fitting gray sweats, Layla felt small again. The predator who'd ridden the helicopter ramp was gone, replaced by the contractor, the refugee, the asset. Vance entered with coffee and a thick file folder stamped top secret. He slid the coffee across the table. Black, lukewarm, the best thing she'd ever smelled. Drink, he said, his voice raspy from exhaustion and shouting. She wrapped her hands around the cup, seeking warmth. Davis. Out of surgery, stable, he'll keep the leg, but his operating days are done. He's going home. Vance rubbed his face with a calloused hand. Miller's concussed but angry, already asking when he can get back on the roster. He paused. Hassan is singing like a bird to the CIA boys. The package we extracted is golden. The mission is a success. He tapped the folder. But now we have to talk about the paperwork. Layla stiffened. She knew this part. The bureaucracy was often more dangerous than the battlefield. I violated my contract, she said flatly. Engaged in direct combat operations. Utilized unauthorized weaponry. Operated outside the rules of engagement. Technically, Vance said, opening the folder, yes, you did all of that. He pulled out a sheet of paper, the operational report. Several lines were blacked out with heavy marker. Command is asking questions. They have drone footage from the exfil. They see an RPG operator go down at 1100 meters with no visible ordnance. No missile trail, no explosion, just dropped. He watched her closely. They want to know how that happened. Layla stared at the coffee. What did you tell them? I had a choice, Vance said, leaning back. I could tell them the truth, that a civilian interpreter with a displacement history picked up a rifle she wasn't supposed to have and made shots that trained snipers couldn't make, that she saved my entire team. He paused. And if I told them that? Then I disappear, Layla finished. The agency grabs me. I don't go back to being a contractor. I become a lab rat. Vance nodded. They'll want to know how you do it. They'll turn you into a full-time trigger puller, drop you into holes darker than Syria. You'll never see a normal life again. He met her eyes. You become a weapon, Layla, permanently. The fear of that cage was colder than the desert night. She'd fought to escape war, not to be chained to it forever. Or, Vance said, sliding the paper toward her, I could lie. She looked down at the report. Under enemy neutralization, Vance had written in block letters, target vehicle suffered catastrophic mechanical failure during high-speed pursuit. Suspected tire blowout caused loss of control. Confirmed KIA on impact. She read the words. It was a lie. It erased the wind reading. It erased the math. It erased the miracle. It reduced her masterpiece of ballistics to a flat tire. A tire blowout, she asked, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Deserts are rough on equipment, Vance shrugged. It happens all the time. He looked at her, his expression softening. There is no record of a shot fired, no record of you on the ramp. As far as the U.S. Navy is concerned, you were cowering in the back with the package, doing your job as a translator. You get your paycheck, you finish your contract, and you go home. Layla ran her finger over the black ink. It was an insult to her skill, but it was a gift to her humanity. He was giving her back her anonymity. He was letting her walk away. Why, she asked. Because you saved my boys, Vance said softly, and the only way I can pay you back is to make sure you don't become one of us. He stood up. The chopper for Jordan leaves in an hour. Your rifle case is on it. Don't miss it. Vance didn't offer a handshake. It would have been too formal. He simply nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin, acknowledging the peer he could never publicly recognize. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the door open. Layla sat alone in the silence for a long moment. She finished the lukewarm coffee, looked at the report one last time, seeing the lie that saved her life. She stood up, leaving the paper on the table. She walked out of the briefing room and into the busy corridor of the base. Soldiers rushed past her, focused on their own wars, their own missions. They looked right through her. She was just a woman in gray sweats, just a refugee, just a contractor. She walked toward the flight line, her steps light, her hands empty. The record belonged to the desert now. The ghost was gone, and for the first time in a long time, Layla Alamin was just Layla. But 3 months later, in a briefing room 12,000 miles away, men in suits would pull that same file. They would study the drone footage. They would analyze the trajectories. They would run the mathematics backward and forward. And they would know that a tire blowout doesn't create a perfect entry wound. They would know. But by then, she would be gone. Sometimes the greatest victories are the ones nobody knows about. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. Sometimes strength doesn't need witnesses. The men who laughed at her on that tarmac would carry her story for the rest of their lives, but they would never speak it. Not because they were ordered to stay silent, but because some truths are too precious to expose. She had proven herself in the only arena that mattered, when lives hung in the balance and failure meant death. And then she had walked away, not because she lacked courage, but because she had the rarest courage of all, the courage to be forgotten. Years later, in a small apartment in a city far from war, Layla would sit by a window and watch the sun set. She would think about the desert, about the minaret, about the moment between heartbeats when impossible things become possible. She would think about the men who lived because she refused to accept their limitations. And she would smile, not with pride, not with regret, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knows their worth needs no proclamation. The wind is a fluid, the bullet is a boat, and sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to disappear, because dignity doesn't demand recognition, it simply acts, and then, like a ghost in the desert, it vanishes into the silence it protected.